Indeed, it is Super Bowl 55 and so much more. Welcome in, everybody, to the YouTube Roundtable. As I always love to say, if you're only hearing us on the audio version of the Three Dog Thursday podcast through Apple's Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcasts, come see what we look like through YouTube. God help us with what we look like, but we're doing the best that we can here as part of Three Dog Thursday. Without further delay, let me say hello to my guest, national football writer, Pro Football Hall of Fame voter, and author of a new book out about John Elway. He's written a bunch of books about pro football, but John Elway, A Relentless Life, came out during the football season. And let's say hello to Jason Cole once again on the Three Dog Thursday podcast. My friend, how you feeling as we head towards the Super Bowl?
I am feeling fantastic. It's always a great week, although it's a weird week this year, obviously, but a great one. I think it's a fantastic Super Bowl, so I'm really looking forward to it.
We're going to talk more about that in a moment. Also with me from the Sports Gambling Podcast, one of my guys, he and Sean Green, Colby Dan, all those guys with the Sports Gambling Podcast, their network of shows, which we're obviously affiliated with, sportsgamblingpodcast.com. Hello, brother Ryan Kramer out in Los Angeles, California. How you feeling?
Well, I mean, it's a great time to be alive. We got through the football season. We're staring down the barrel of the Super Bowl being played in your backyard with Mr. Tom Brady. He got it done. How about that?
Is crazy. And obviously, I mean, I'm in the bag for the Buccaneers. The guys on the YouTube roundtable can see this. Come find us. I've got the Super Bowl champions hat in the background for Mojo. I've got the shirt on today from the Buccaneers win in 03. So you know where my allegiance lies here. I'm part of the Bucs Radio Broadcast. This is crazy stuff, and I'm going to go ahead and put this up on the screen. Jason Cole, to you first. It is the first time ever that a team plays essentially a home game in their home stadium. 55 years of Super Bowls. Now, yes, the Rams of 1979 did play at the Rose Bowl, not their home stadium. Yes, the 49ers, and Jason may have been at both of these. I don't know. 49ers beat Dan Marino and the Dolphins.
I was at that game.
You were at that game, Palo Alto, California, not the 49ers stadium, but still in the area. This is the first time a team in their own home stadium, and it's against the Chiefs, the defending champs. Jason, great, as you mentioned, great on-paper matchup for this thing and great storylines.
Yeah, I mean, everything intersects. I mean, you talk about, you start with Mahomes and you start with Brady, the greatest quarterback of all time against the guy who's will try to take that title from him, hopefully one day. I don't know that anybody's ever going to get close to 10 Super Bowl appearances again, but certainly Patrick Mahomes is on to the right start. Spagnuolo against Brady, Arians, trying for his first title, Reed trying to go back to back after waiting 20 years to do it. The pass rush of the Buccaneers against the injured offensive tackles from Kansas City. It's a phenomenal thing to watch. The changeover of the Buccaneers from a year ago at this time to where they are now, essentially because of one player, right? I mean, one guy makes that big of a difference. So, I mean, there are some fantastic storylines here. But it really comes down to Mahomes and Brady, because I really want to know how geeked up Mahomes is going to be to try and get a little revenge for that AFC Championship game from 2 years ago. I'm sure he remembers those 3 straight 3rd and 10 plays. And that's probably stuck in his craw because they should have won that game, but they let the Patriots get away.
Well, and it's a good point because the Patriots won the head-to-head matchup with the Chiefs 2 years ago in the AFC title game, then won the whole thing. And then a year ago, the Titans took care of New England in the opening round. New England never played Kansas City. Kansas City goes on to win the whole thing. So, you can play up as much as you want. Hey, he's never beaten Tom Brady in a playoff game. They did win a championship last year. Enough of me. Ryan Kramer, to you, how excited as we're approaching Sunday and Super Bowl 55 are you for all the storylines and the matchup?
It's funny because coming into this playoff season and even the Super Bowl, one of the things we kind of reflected back on is how much the gambling industry has changed, even this past year. With the amount of props you can bet on week to week. And it kind of coming into the Super Bowl, it was like, is it going to be the same? Is that 57-page PDF still going to be the same burn? And it has been, honestly, even though it's the chalkiest of chalk, it's Tom Brady, it's Patrick Mahomes, it's Chiefs, it's Buccaneers. When you dive into the specific matchups, when you dive into the numbers, something about the way both of these teams kind of spread out the distribution of how they play presents this amazing gambling opportunity where you could easily find, say, 10, 20, or even like we've done on the Sports Gambling Podcast, 30 props that we like, because there's so much scattered value. You can kind of lean into an opinion. And so, to answer your specific question, this is the game we all needed to see. Now, some of us were stubborn and maybe didn't think Tom Brady was going to get it done. Little pulling back the curtain, TJ, my better half and now kids are all Tampa Bay fans. They
Good
were
for
they were
them.
they
Good
were
for
I
them.
was I was losing the battle already as a Giants homer, but boy, this getting to the Super Bowl, they're in on Tom Brady. I'm in on Tom Brady, so I'm excited to see it because, like you said, this is kind of the last bit of revenge Patrick Mahomes has, and if he can take down Tom Brady, that certainly is a good way to catapult a potential Hall of Fame career going forward.
All right. Interesting on a couple of fronts. I mean, number one, Jason should know this. Listeners on the Sports Gambling Podcast, they love the hashtag DGens only for degenerates only. So it does not surprise me in the least. You guys have 57 different prop angles and parlays and whatever on the Sports Gambling Podcast on the Super Bowl. More on that in a few moments. Jason, as I made mention, and I'll share the screen again here and we'll plug away for your book that you wrote about John Elway and his autobiography, his autobiography out this past fall.
No, just biography, not autobiography.
Biography, not his autobiography, the biography that you wrote about him. Thank you for the correction.
No
when you talk about going back to back, all right, the last two teams to go back to back, New England with Tom Brady and John Elway. Question to you. Mahomes has a chance to do this. How is it similar? He's not as old as what Elway was at the end of his career, and certainly Brady was in about the same range, a third or fourth year quarterback going back to back. So there's a difference between those two. But how similar, how different is Mahomes going for the back to back like Elway did in the late 90s and like Brady has done as the last team to do it in 03 and 04?
How likely is he to do it, or what is it going to be like? I'm not quite sure where the question's going. Let me make sure I specify first.
How about how similar is what he's trying to do to what Elway did and what Brady did? Is that good enough?
I get what I would say. This, I think it's similar to Elway in that Elway at the end of his career finally had a team where he had a coach who surrounded him with talent and said, look, we're going to take your talents and do everything we can to augment that, whether that's the blocking scheme that they had, which was controversial at the time, whether it was getting a running back like Terrell Davis, getting a Rod Smith, getting an Ed McCaffrey, Shannon Sharp, right? That's something that did not happen in Elway's first basically 13 years of his career. He was not surrounded by high caliber players. Basically, Dan Rives for 10 years said, look, we got you, go out and win it for us, right? In the fourth quarter, we're going to play ball control, but if it's a close game, you go win it, which is how he sort of ends up with that captain comeback style in the early part of his career. When Brady wins back-to-backs, again, not the most talented team, but really more of a defense-oriented team those first three titles, and it was more ball control. I mean, obviously the Carolina game, they kind of open it up and score a lot of points in that game, and you'd start to see glimpses of him as an offensive juggernaut that play out the rest of that decade. But the way that they mostly won those first two titles, those back-to-back titles with Brady, was defensive oriented. So that, to me, Mahomes right now is a little bit more like Elway. In fact, they're much more similar as players, period, if you look at their athletic genius. But Elway had to wait a long time, where Mahomes has had the convenience of having Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce and all the other weapons that he has around him.
No doubt. Ryan, same kind of thing to you here. I mean, obviously Elway was older. The anniversary of the Super Bowl back-to-back win against the Falcons was last Sunday. That was his final game. He retired after that. Brady was much younger going back-to-back. Amazing, though, that out of all of the guys that had chances, whether you're talking about Russell Wilson or Ben Roethlisberger, anybody winning a Super Bowl over the course of the last 10 years or so, nobody's been able to go back-to-back. What about Mahomes and the chances to do it? Ryan Kramer.
I mean, I think Jason nailed a lot of the points, right? Like, he kind of joined a team that was already ready. They were ready. They showed they were ready by being pretty good with Alex Smith, who's the ultimate gatekeeper in the National Football League. And I think, you look at the list, there aren't even that many teams that played for multiple Super Bowls. So like when you prune out this list of quarterbacks that are having opportunities to go for back to back, yeah, I mean, it certainly is a legacy stamper, I guess. And I think, specifically in the way that he's doing it, we kind of have this long running debate between ourselves and Colby Dant of the college experience, where like, who's better, John Elway or Tom Brady? And it's the ultimate like team versus just gifted talent conversation. And I think a little bit, people will throw shade at Patrick Mahomes because of the team around him. But to the comment I liked how you put it, athletic genius. There's something about the way that he plays football that's just special. And sure, it helps to have Andy Reid, and sure, it helps to have that offensive just cupboard stocked full with talent. But you still got to get it done. And so at the end of the day, I love his chances. But as you know, TJ, hard for me to bet against Brady because we know Eli isn't coming out of the tunnel for the Kansas City Chiefs.
And he says that as a Giants guy. That's the voice of Ryan Kramer, Sports Gambling Podcast, and on social media at Kramer Centric. Love those guys, sportsgamblingpodcast.com. Jason Cole also with me as well, national football writer, author, Pro Football Hall of Fame voter. More on that in a second. Find him at Jason Cole 62 on Twitter as well. Again, if you're only hearing us on the audio version of the podcast, come find the YouTube Roundtable Super Bowl Preview Edition. See TJ with the Buccaneers Super Bowl hat from Super Bowl 37 and the shirt that I'm pimping. I'm macked out. I get to work a game at Raymond James Stadium for Super Bowl 55 as part of Buccaneers Radio. I don't know what to do with myself between now and Sunday. As I mentioned, Jason, the Pro Football Hall of Fame, it has been odd. It has been crazy. It has been awful with a lot of the restrictions and the guidelines and COVID-19. So the Pro Football Hall of Fame vote that would typically go on the Saturday before the Super Bowl, the meeting would happen, the vote would happen. It is different now because the vote has already happened. It happened virtually previously. So take us through a little bit of this. I'm sharing with the audience here about the Pro Football Hall of Fame finalists. We see it up on the screen right now. If you're with us on the YouTube, Peyton Manning, Charles Woodson, Calvin Johnson, Jared Allen are all of the first-time ballot individuals that made it as finalists. There are 15 total finalists. But Jason, take us through how odd, just real quick, the process has been, because instead of the Saturday prolonged, lengthy meeting, you guys did this virtually previously and did the voting, and it's been different, and it was different in this case.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually a little bit more orderly than we usually are. Maybe not having us in the same room prevented it from being a little bit of a frat party. But I would say that it was a Zoom call. It was 2 weeks ago on a Tuesday. I think it was like the 15th, if I remember, or the 19th. I can't remember what day it was. It was 9 hours, and this is always an exhaustive process. I mean, it really, really is difficult. But at the end of the day, I think the arguments were the same that we usually have, especially when you've talked about guys like Tony Baselli so many times in the room, Alan Faneca so many times in the room. The discussion on Peyton Manning was literally 7 seconds. Like,
right.
I mean, and that was like 5 seconds too long. It should have just been, say his name and like let's move on. But he's the one who's clearly obvious in this one. I think Charles Woodson is pretty strong bet. I think Calvin Johnson is also a pretty strong bet in this one. There were a little more question about Calvin Johnson. So I don't know that those are done, but I mean, look, who's standing in the way of Peyton Manning, getting into the Hall of Fame? So there are 5 spots when you look at it that way. 3 of them are probably taken. At least 2 of them are most likely taken. And then it starts to get pretty difficult because you've got, 12 or 13 guys left for 2 or 3 spots. And this is always really, really, really hard because you've got 15 guys who all have a reasonable argument, at the very least, to get into the Hall of Fame.
And we should make mention again, at the time that we're taping this, you don't know the results. They have not been tabulated. The voters do not know the results. You will not find out same way until Saturday. And then the Hall of Fame selectees will also be finding out on Saturday. Even though everything is spread out and everybody's virtual, they're holding to that. So don't be bugging. Jason doesn't know. We know Peyton Manning. You can't say that. I'll say Peyton Manning. You have a better chance of aliens showing up at halftime during the weekend show. And by the way, they probably have the prop on the Sports
I want
Gambling
to ask
Podcast.
Ryan, what are the odds on the alien thing?
I don't know what the odds on the aliens showing up at halftime of the show. What do you think? Would we put that at 100 to 1, 10 million to 1? What would we put that at?
No offense, TJ, but this event is occurring in Florida, so I would say that increases the odds. Perhaps it's a 50 to 1 dog.
We're number one, baby. We are number one. Florida.
Yeah, Florida's got it all. But I mean, you got a better chance of that happening than Peyton Manning not being in virtually unanimously.
Yes.
But they will all find out coming up in some very interesting names and debates, as you mentioned with Tony Bucs. Give me a couple of them. Go. Yeah.
You got 2 Buccaneers. You got, Rondé Barber and John Lynch. And I mean, I think Rondé's probably most likely going to have to wait a couple of years to get his chance. I think there's a really good argument for Rondé. But John Lynch, this is the 8th time we've had him in the room and as a finalist. And, I really believe in John Lynch, that he deserves to be in. I think that this was probably the best discussion about John Lynch that we've ever had. I can't share what anybody else's thoughts were, but one of the lines I had is, we're torturing this man at a certain point. When you keep bringing him back and bringing him back and bringing him back, and you keep telling him, like, you're in the discussion, you're worthy of very strong consideration, and then you just keep like passing on him. Like, to me, that's wrong. It's wrong at a certain point. Either he's in or he's not.
Right. You keep bringing him to the doorstep saying you're a finalist, but then you're not good enough for the 5th year, the 8th year. Are you really a finalist? Are you really a Hall of Famer?
There's only one other person who's ever gone through this. I can't remember who it was, but that person eventually made it.
Was it Art Monk? Art Monk
no,
was there
over
and over again, right?
I should have looked it up. I can't.
Okay.
We've had he was a finalist like 9 or 10 straight years, and then finally made it. But again, and John Lynch is so classy about this. And like, I have my own bias because he went to Stanford, I went to Stanford, that whole thing. But he's so classy. He never wants to say anything, but you can see the hurt in his eyes when he shows up. He'll show up at that Friday luncheon that they usually have. Now, we're not having it this year, but the Hall of Fame puts on a luncheon, the Gold Jacket luncheon, and all those guys come in and they invite all the guys who are finalists. And John shows up and he sees the voters, and it's just like wincing in pain, like that. And you just kind of go, John, I feel so bad. I'm sorry that you're having to go through this again.
By the way, that's a typical reaction whenever Cole is around, that people are wincing and not.
Well, yeah, they've been doing that for 30 years since I started covering the NFL. That's true. But usually it was because I was a bearer of bad news, which I was the bearer of bad news. So, yeah. But yeah, I mean, look, it's just hard when you're dealing with guys who are right on the cusp. But there are always, those guys who are first ballot guys. Last year was Troy Polamalu. This year, we've got 2 or 3 guys who are very strong first ballot Hall of Fame type of guys.
And you got guys like Charles Woodson, like you mentioned, Clay Matthews, the longtime Cleveland Brown, is a first-time finalist. All of them being debated. I know my in-laws are humongous Zach Thomas fans from the Miami Dolphins. So
and I am too, because I covered him. He was great.
You can't put everybody in. That's the other thing. If you only have 5,
it's going to be a great debate since we have Ryan on here.
Yeah, we got Ryan.
When Eli Manning comes up.
Oh no!
Now there's a reaction. That's a great reaction.
Right, Eli Manning. So I have my thoughts, but
yes, no.
Ryan, yes or no, Eli Manning Hall of Fame, real quick. What do you say, Ryan Kramer, Sports Gambling Podcast?
So one of the things that I stumbled into, which I probably already knew, but only quarterback from the NFC to play for 2 Super Bowls, or to win 2 Super Bowls, and definitely even play. I think it's just him and Russell Wilson if you look at the past 15 years. Here's the thing. Only 5 people have won the Super Bowl MVP twice. And while it's easy to remember the defense kind of carrying the load in that first run, Eli still showed up. Especially against your Bucs on that run, TJ, if you remember. But the second go about, people seem to have forgotten that Eli Manning carried that team and that offense to a Super Bowl. So, look, I'm a Giants fan. I think there's something poetic to someone playing their entire career for one team. I think there's something poetic about being one of the 5 humans on the planet that have 2 Super Bowl MVPs. So I think it's going to be hard for him to not get in. Also, he has the name Manning. That being said, I think when you look at the numbers, and you look at even measure him against his peers, Ben Roethlisberger, Phillip Rivers, it's hard to really see anything that Eli has done to stand out
Wait. I'm not in the
other
room.
than
I'm not in the room, but we cannot have the name Phillip Rivers in the sentence with Eli Manning, who's won 2 Super Bowls and won 2 MVPs. I know there's a love fest for Phillip Rivers. He ain't on the same line with the guys that have won the big one and won the MVP. So if we're gonna name names, Roethlisberger is fine. Again, I'm not a Hall of Fame voter. Cole just loves to sit back and listen to radio guys. And
so the question is, TJ, if you're setting the over under of Hall of Famers to come out of that quarterback class, and of course we know JP Lossman isn't going to get there. It's
Los
if you
Angeles'
set it
finest.
if you set it to 1.5, are you going? Oh, Big Ben's in. I think we all can agree. Big
Right.
Ben's a Hall of Famer. But look, Eli played in New York. Eli's going to get in, and I think that's the thing. I think people will begrudgingly let him in almost. You know what I mean? Like it will be he's a Manning. He won 2 Super Bowls, and he played for the Giants. Hard to not see him getting in. That being said, I am very intrigued. I can't wait. What is it? 4 more years when he goes onto the ballot, because it's going to be one of the more intriguing debates we've seen in some time.
And who else is around him too? That's another part of this as well, Jason.
Can I make
Sure.
one point about Eli?
Yeah.
And look, I agree that Eli, I think, was going to eventually make it. I don't know if he'll make it on the first ballot. I don't know who else is going to be on the ballot at that point. And that all weighs into it, right? Sometimes you can get in on the first ballot, like your Marcus Allen, because it was not the greatest looking ballot in the world, right? There was a lot of offensive linemen. And if you go back and look at that class, it was a lot of offensive linemen. So who knows exactly how it's going to play out? I would just say this about Eli, and I've said it many times. He was great in those playoff runs. He was the trigger man. The defense played its role and was really important. He made key plays. You talked about that Tampa game where he was just dialed in that whole game. Not the greatest Tampa team in the world, but it was a road win, got him going. So he did his part. And if you're a Giants fan, you can always look at Eli Manning and say he held up his end of the bargain, because you won 2 Super Bowls during his career. And that's what you can go for. But I always look at Eli, and especially compared to his brother, and I say he played a lot of his career as if he had just rolled out of bed on a Saturday after a mega kegger at the frat house. Okay. and there were games where it was just awesome. And like the beer had done its job. And then there were days where it was like 5 interceptions and you go, that dude is hung over, right? Like just, it looked like that. And you guys are laughing because I know you agree.
Well, especially because
how do you analyze that?
Right. Kramer had him half the time at -6 or -3.5 with the Giants, and he's ready to put his fist through the TV when he was watching those games you're talking about. I just come back to one thing, the playoff wins. He won 2 NFC title games on the road in overtime. You can talk about the defense and the circumstances, et cetera.
I was at that Green Bay game. I was at that Green Bay game against Favre. Mm-hmm. He was brilliant in that game. And again, he had these moments, and you just sit there and go, why wasn't more of the career like this, right? Like, why didn't we get 80-20 of this rather than 20-80? But the 20 is probably enough.
Probably is enough. And one more on this before we move on and get out of here with a couple of more fun things about the Super Bowl, present day Super Bowl 55. Again, Tony Romo, fantastic on the air with CBS. Love the commentary. Please, for the love of all that's holy, don't talk about Hall of Fame with a guy that won 1 playoff game in his career if we're going to keep Eli Manning out. And I'm not on the Manning payroll.
I'm not a Romo guy. Tony Romo is a really good dude. And he's one of those guys, he remembers your name, he treats you really well. I'm not disputing this, but he's not a Hall of Famer.
Thank you.
He's just not. And
1 playoff win.
And so he's not. Look, TJ, you don't have to convince me anymore.
No, I know that. I'm saying to the audience.
Yeah, right. I mean, he's a really good dude, and he compiled some nice looking stats. He's Danny White. Right?
Yeah,
he's Danny White with a better personality.
Yeah, and Danny White probably won more than 1 playoff game too, by the way.
I don't even know if he did or not. It doesn't matter but he's not in the Hall of Fame. And he's not going in the Hall of Fame.
There you go.
Phillip Rivers has a better argument to get into the Hall of Fame than Tony Romo. I love Tony Romo. He's fantastic at what his job is. He's self-deprecating. I like to listen to it all. It's all fun.
Yes.
But he's not a Hall of Famer. He's Boomer Esiason with a better sense of humor.
And Boomer did get to a Super Bowl, by the way, too. All right. Sports Gambling Podcast. As we mentioned, you've got the prop bets up. Ryan Kramer, we're looking here for a plug on sportsgamblingpodcast.com. We've only got a few moments left here in our YouTube roundtable segment. Give me a prop or two. I know you're doing a lot of vast research. Give me a prop or two that you really like out of Super Bowl 55 here, please, if you would.
I'll give you two. I'll give you one that's more of a mathematical approach, and that's just taking both quarterbacks to have their first pass be incomplete. Both quarterbacks, Tom Brady's is plus 150, Patrick Mahomes is plus 180. The math here just simply suggests if you combine their completion percentage that we're going to see 57% of the time where you're going to hit one or the other or both, which means you're going to profit. On the other side, if you're looking to maybe be a less of a let's go buy a CD and turn a 3% return, if you want to juice up the returns a little bit and say you like the Bucs, let's talk about how we can get a better price for your money than betting the money line at plus 140, plus 150, than taking the 3 points. Listen, Tom Brady's never won a Super Bowl by less than 3 points. Let's juice that line up. Tampa Bay Bucs minus 2.5, protect ourselves against the push, plus 180. So now you're getting 1.8 to 1 on your money. Another way to play it, quite simply, Tom Brady to win the MVP. Not sure I can find a narrative where the Bucs win and he doesn't get the MVP. And if that happens, you can get plus 210 on your money. So again, if you're looking to bet the Bucs and you want to have a little bit more fun with it, the last thing I'll say, because I'm a big Ronald Jones guy, I know you think Fournette's the guy more. I think Ronald Jones, his ability to be a power running back in that kind of offensive line, defensive line matchup, Ronald Jones to rush for 50 yards and Tampa Bay to win the game, 5-1, TJ. And that's if you really want to push the chips to the center of the table, that's the way I would play it.
Listen to those props. These guys are all over it on the Sports Gambling Podcast. Ryan Kramer with them. I love this, and I've already made mention that I was going to say this when you came on, that I had a dark horse for MVP. Devin White, the second-year linebacker, is 40-1 last I checked. At most places, he's 35 or 40-1 to win the MVP award. He has been coming on like gangbusters. 15 tackles in the NFC Championship game and a fumble recovery. That if you're just a fun play, Devin White to win the MVP, and there have been defensive guys that have won. In fact, the last time the Super Bowl, in fact, 2 times ago that the Super Bowl was in Tampa when the Ravens won, I think Mr. Cole was there. I was there against someone's Giants. Sorry, Ryan Kramer. Ray Lewis was the MVP in the defensive masterpiece by the Ravens. So,
quick nugget on that, actually. So Justin Tuck, if you remember, against Tom Brady and the Patriots when they were undefeated, had a marvelous game, still didn't get the MVP. So I like the angle. Maybe if you want to play the Devin White angle, I'm prepared with real degenerate props here, TJ. Devin White to have the first interception is 40-1. And could you see a pass tipped over the middle to Kelsey, a pass tipped over the middle to someone else? Devin White flashes in front, grabs it, 40-1. That's a fun payoff.
I love all of the props, the degenerate props. SportsGamblingPodcast.com. Mr. Cole, yes, you have one you like? You have
I'm going to say, like, if the Bucs are going to win this game, yeah, I mean, certainly Brady is a huge, favorite to win the MVP. But I think that Shaq Barrett or JPP have to be the guys who have to come up with a couple of sacks or a strip sack or force an interception. One of those guys, like for MVP. I mean, I think Devin White's not a bad play, but given the matchups and given the importance of getting to Mahomes and getting him on the ground, and the fact that I think they're going to blitz less than they usually do. They'll selectively blitz in positive situations. Like you won't have a 3rd and 15 with only 4 guys coming this time. You'll have the 3rd and 15, and Todd Bowles will bring the extra guy in that kind of situation just to get him on the ground. But to me, it's one of those 2 end guys, basically. Because Justin Tuck, and you're right, Ryan, he was brilliant in that game. I remember I thought about him in that game. Should he be the MVP? But, it's just hard for an inside guy when you're covered up most of the time, and you're really just getting in a guy's face, and you're not necessarily getting him on the ground. The other guys, I think, have a chance to get him on the ground. So those guys are interesting plays, too.
We shall see what happens, by the way. Go ahead.
And fun ways I'll just really quick, fun ways to cash in on that. You could take Tampa over 2.5 sacks. That's a plus 115 proposition. You can also get really crazy. Shaq Barrett over a half sack for the game is plus 300. JPP over a half sack for the game is plus 400. And if you really
Wow.
want to have some fun, Ndamukong Suh, who might have some one-on-one matchups, 6-1 to get a sack.
I like all of that. By the way, when the Buccaneers did win their one and only Super Bowl, their one and only appearance, Dexter Jackson, safety, had 2 interceptions in the first half, 2 of the 5 against Rich Gannon. Talk about bad Super Bowl memories. And he was the MVP as a defensive player. We'll see what happens. I agree on face value. If the Bucs are winning, Tom Brady, if he does much at all, is more than likely the MVP, and what a storybook ending that will be. We got to get out of here in a moment or two here. Let me plug again for my guys. You've been hearing from Jason Cole as part of what we're doing. Check him out right here on social media, Jason Cole 62. There he is right there. Follow him along, including everything about the Elway book, A Relentless Life, which is out right now. Jason book, I know, did very well around the holidays, but we're kicking it back up here because, again, he's one of the last quarterbacks, back-to-back Super Bowl wins. Read all about it in the book, right? Elway, A Relentless Life, real quick, right, Jason?
Yes, absolutely. A wonderful book. I had so much fun. Took me 5 years to research and write. Really one of my favorite events as a writer. And by the way, on my Twitter profile, talking about Dwight Smith, talking about gambling and how Vegas always turns the Super Bowl winner. That was an interesting conversation on WDAE in Tampa this morning.
Oh, so yes.
Gamblers should go check out that one.
Yeah, Dwight Smith from the Bucs, who had 2 pick sixes off Rich Gannon in that Super Bowl, was on local radio in Tampa midweek talking about the NFL and how the Super Bowl is fixed, et cetera, and serious and meant it. And so just something to stir it up midweek, whatever it's worth. Although I don't know how much they questioned him on. So in other words, your pick sixes were fixed as well as part of that.
It was nuts. It was just nuts.
There you go.
To.
There's the short.
But it was fun. It was fun listening.
It was good radio on that. Ryan Kramer and the Sports Gambling Podcast. There are my dudes, Ryan and Sean on the Sports Gambling Podcast. You find them at Gambling Podcast on social media. sportsgamblingpodcast.com, Gambling Podcast as well, Sports Gambling Podcast on YouTube. There's the YouTube show. Ryan and Sean breaking down everything with Super Bowl 55. And again, they do a great job helping us out, helping us promote on Three Dog Thursday. I love the fact, Brother Kramer, that you are on board with my Buccaneers as the underdog, as the Bucs have been the underdog each of the last 2 times now with the Saints and the Packers. Viva la Buccaneers as the underdog in Super Bowl 55. Guys, final thought. Any final thought? Ryan, you first here before we get out of here for Super Bowl 55.
Talking about the, gambling, the game being fixed, I would just advise that you ask me my opinion on that after the game, and I'm sure I'll even love the output or think it was totally fixed. No, I would say I'll leave you with a final score, TJ. I do think this game is going to start slow. It's going to finish fast. I'll crowbar on another prop. Second half to have more points than first half. That should be a fun one. Final score: Tom Brady and the Bucs get it done, 34-29.
How about that? Oh, 34-29. I like a high score.
You always got to be weird. You always got to be weird with the
you guys
hope
have
that
all
my
the
Super Bowl
angles and
squares,
all the analytics and all the algorithms to come up with it. Jason Cole, final thought before we get out of here for Super Bowl 55 and the whole weekend.
Look, this is the end of an amazing season that the NFL deserves a lot of credit for. I don't think Roger Goodell is getting enough credit, along with Jeff Miller,
Amen,
who handles their health and safety. I know that's kind of boring for fans, but look, they got this season through. This is a minor miracle, that they were able to play all 256 games, get through the playoffs with no really major incidents other than Denver having to play without a quarterback 1 week, which was their fault. This is amazing. The ambiance of this game, TJ, I am really looking forward to hear what the feeling is like in this Super Bowl and the energy is like in this Super Bowl compared to others, because this, I think to have that feeling where you feel like you're being shot out of a cannon, not the cannon at Raymond James Stadium, but right. A cannon, just generally how guys describe it, coming through that tunnel and that kind of electricity. I just wonder how this Super Bowl compares to that, and whether guys are that amped up when it's 22,000 people in the stands.
Yeah, it's going to be different, about a third of what would normally be there.
Right.
And I've been in that stadium 200 times, and Jason, you've been there a bunch, working Buccaneer games. And now this one is for the whole thing, but it's weird how it's going to be for the whole thing.
It's a preseason attendance.
I'll report back about all of it. And again, we worked 7 of the 8 home games this year had some fans at them. And a lot of the games had no fans at them, but 7 of the 8 Buccaneer games had fans at them. So we've gotten a little used to this. So I'll report back on how all of it is for Super Bowl 55. Again, Jason Cole, love his insight. The Elway book is Elway, A Relentless Life. Go find that wherever you find books, Amazon.com, and wherever you find books. Ryan Kramer, Sports Gambling Podcast. Boys, thank you for helping me preview Super Bowl 55 and much more here on the YouTube Roundtable and the $3 Thursday podcast.